By the way, this stream was not sponsored by Trader Joe's. Hi, we're here to interrupt this usually scheduled programming to bring you some tea from the Jeopardy and quiz communities, because I'm a cheap intellectual who loves drama. But it also kind of brought up a much deeper question, which my class back in January, early January, pretty much talked about, which I kind of phrased as a chicken or the egg question. Do we make it newsworthy, or does the person crafting the story try to make it newsworthy? Hello. Stay tuned, everybody. So Yogesh Raut, who is he? Well, I found this article, the first way that I found out about the story was through this BuzzFeed news article, which I'm going to show you here, which I think is the best interpretation of how the story went down, because we actually get some of his perspective in here. Which I think is but I think what's more fascinating is the subheading for the story, which is professional smart people are fighting about public displays of intelligence, which, if anybody has been in an intellectual discussion or has come away from the world of academia, going back to the more public trade world, intellectualism hasn't exactly had a good rep. It's only been recently that I think we're starting to get it, but even so, there's still been a huge divide. There's still a long way to go in terms of respect of brain smarts versus street smarts, which it shouldn't be a versus, in my opinion. I think there should be a mutual respect of being street smart and book smart. And I think this is yet another example of this haven't caught up. But I think it's an example of something else, which I am going to get to in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and read off this article. This was posted back on, it was around 11 a.m. when I first came across this, but it recently got edited. So this is an excerpt about the series Please Like Me, which is about influencers and internet culture, and about in particular about online community microdramas. So special credit to Kelsey Weekman for writing this report. A 3-time Jeopardy winner who went viral for criticizing the beloved show, so the backlash to his posts misses the real reason he has beef with it. I have a master's degree in film and television studies. I know how a television show works. It's a business. Yogesh Raut, a blogger, podcaster, and quizzing expert, told BuzzFeed News. But Jeopardy is not good for quizzing. The 38-year-old Washington resident calls himself a member of the quizzing community. He prefers to use the word trivia as it diminishes the value of what we care about by making it seem trivial. That first sentence right there was kind of like, there's also prescriptive and descriptive meaning. I studied English and linguistics in my undergrad, and trivia, in terms of its descriptive meaning, does not necessarily mean the same thing as trivial. That's just one letter difference. But nowadays, we tend to look about it as trivia as equivalent to quiz. In fact, even the word quiz itself had its own troubles back in the day. Quiz was looked upon more as a trial rather than as a fun game testing your knowledge. But anyway, that's kind of unimportant, so moving on. The quizzing community is made up of various tournaments in different formats, all of which quiz people on their general knowledge. Jeopardy is the most famous quiz show, but Raut has pointed out that it's not a meritocracy equivalent to the Olympics, which That's the other problem that I had. I don't think the Olympics is even a good example of a meritocracy, especially with the way things are run right now, because there are some people who are obviously Olympic material, but due to funds or their circumstances or where they come from or even political asylum, they're basically unable to compete. So even the Olympics, even with its genetic merit, even with its merit of ability, you can't exactly call it a pure meritocracy as he is trying to describe. But I think the Facebook post is what kind of made me pay attention a little bit. So we'll come up to that. You only have to be smart enough to pass the written test. But this next part, these next two parts are kind of interesting here. You only have to be smart enough to pass the written test, that it doesn't matter how good at knowing things you are, he told BuzzFeed News. It matters how telegenic you are. Or telegenic? I didn't even know how to pronounce copacetic before, so. But yeah, I think that sentence right there, I think he should have led with, because he's right. In that sense, he's right. The more important part, especially when it comes to television, unfortunately, is appearance on television and whether or not you're interesting enough for television. We're going to get more into that in a sec. Let's keep going. Raut emerged as the winner of 3 Jeopardy episodes and $96,403 that aired from January 11th to January 16th. After the first episode aired, he criticized the show, which he admitted was reasonably entertaining, in a Facebook post for not rewarding true talent and for being, quote-unquote, fundamentally incompatible with true social justice. And it's since been privated, but I was smart enough to take some screenshots of it, so I'll show you. So I'll read a little bit as to what it says. I won't put it up for the sake of respecting privacy here, but I'll read I'll read certain parts of it to give a little bit more context. That's the point Raut says people are missing when they get angry that he criticized Jeopardy. He thinks it's a great show, just not as important as everyone thinks it is. Jeopardy is not the problem; its centrality to American society is. Excuse me. There will never be a healthy quizzing culture in this country until we learn to stop pretending that Jeopardy is important, he wrote. The fact that actual quizzing continues to be a fringe subculture in the shadows is what allowed racists, misogynists, and outright harassers to thrive in collegiate quiz bowl for so long. And that is for YouTube censorship purposes, because we can't exactly phrase out the 3-letter or the 5-letter adjective that comes with it. But you see the word in front of you. So there you go. Since sharing that post and completing his run on TV, Raut has faced so much negativity from fans that he had to unfollow Jeopardy on Facebook, he told BuzzFeed News. When the game show's official page shared a clip of Raut's debut, commenters ridiculed him for appearing to be an quote-unquote arrogant, self-absorbed sore loser and smug, among other things. He's good and he knows it. Don't like him, one person wrote. Can't stand this man's arrogance and won't be watching till he's lost and is no longer on, another said. Raut told BuzzFeed News he received the same kinds of comments in other Facebook groups and his own Facebook posts and on Reddit. In the first moments of his interview with us, Raut expressed concern that he was coming across as egotistical by sharing that he has 3 different master's degrees in 3 different fields, which I would like to know what those 3 different fields are. Obviously, film and television is one of them, so what are the other 2? I really want to find out. Anyway, he told BuzzFeed News that his so-called arrogant demeanor was his response to the instructions they received backstage to move the show along, and implied in a Facebook post that comments reducing his behavior to arrogance are racist. Racism doesn't always look like a tiki torch held aloft or a swastika on an armband. Sometimes it looks like a double standard in dividing arrogance or their undesirable qualities, he wrote. Sometimes it looks like projecting aggressiveness into neutral behavior. So that one right here, especially this part where he got the instructions to move the show along, believe it or not, this kind of takes advantage of our traditional trope building minds, which psychoanalyst Irving Goffman kind of talked about, which in particular we love to put things into tropological archetypes. With every reality show, we always have that couple that we root for, and then there's the villain. And unfortunately, Raut, with his steep intelligence, was an easy target to be the villain. Like, let's be frank here. Like, he is the easy target to be the villain, given his experience in quiz culture. Now, here's a little bit more context from from his actual Facebook post, which I have screenshotted and has since been privated. But I hope to at least give you a little bit more light, because I think the other problem is his presentation didn't break away from that staged, what they call a pseudo event, basically an artificial event that makes it newsworthy. Raut, unfortunately, just didn't have enough ammunition to basically shift the narrative into more so what he was really talking about, which is toxic culture when it comes to quizzes, be it in collegiate settings or bars. And especially with Jeopardy, it could have been an opportunity to bring in more people, not just people who could be so-called entertaining, which I think is a valid debate. Here it is. So he starts off with the first paragraph of the post about basically his credentials, about what he's talking about. He's led victorious teams in the Quizzing World Cup and in the Colorado Quizzing League, and I think it's Colorado, and finished in the top 10 in last year's Learned League Rundle Championship, finishing 8th when the people below him tied at 9th. And he also has a lot of blogging and internet experience, and obviously he has a master's in television. And yet he's having to claim directly, today I'm receiving the most attention, praise, congratulations, and nasty trolling from strangers of my life, and for what? What did I do to get the biggest paycheck of my quizzing career? I beat 2 guys. And then he emphasizes that this is not to be a slight on the other 2 competitors because they have their own talents in Jeopardy players. Nothing is supposed to slight them in any way. But then the next paragraph kind of undoes that. This is the first problem that I think unfortunately has conformed. That I think is the reason why Jeopardy producers, even though he did say that they treated him well, I think, unfortunately, that is the aspect that kind of grasped onto and maybe emphasized more for the sake of television drama. Imagine if you were a chess player who racked up a string of victories against grandmasters at high-level tournaments, but the only thing you got recognized or highly remunerated for was beating some 1800 or 2200 level players at a non-standard bughouse version of chess, a derivative game designed to introduce high levels of variance that constantly threatened to swamp out differences in skill level on a glorified reality show. That would be weird, wouldn't it? I try to think of an analogy with regard to Big Four sports and nothing even makes sense. There's also not an insult to Jeopardy, which is a TV show designed for entertainment and a reasonably good one. It's entertaining to watch, but it bears the same thinking relationship with real quizzing that Holy Moly does to golf. There has never been and never will be any justification for treating Jeopardy as the Olympics of quizzing. He basically said it himself. Jeopardy is actually not supposed to be an Olympics of quizzing. With the nature of television, and unfortunately the nature of the American public, it's not like it never was supposed to be, and at the rate that it's going, and especially with the way people have reacted to this article, it probably never will be the Olympics of quizzing, unfortunately. And the other part is here, Jeopardy is not the problem, it's centrality. This is the other part that kind of made me think about this a little bit more. Jeopardy is not the problem, its centrality to American society is. There will never be a healthy quizzing culture in this country until we stop pretending that Jeopardy is important. And then to fast forward a little bit, as a social scientist, I'm telling you that the number one way to get diverse minorities on an equal footing in quizzing is to make it as meritocratic as possible. Have we learned nothing from Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Peter Norman, and all other brave POC and allies who prove that only open meritocratic systems that distribute rewards in proportion to talent and effort permit truth tellers to survive. Which, while yes, those athletes have been important in terms of trying to encourage meritocratic sport, those same athletes, unfortunately, in a way, for a good while, except with public opinion, pretty much failed at addressing the meritocratic system, because, let's face it, we're human. Ultimately, a purely meritocratic system is pretty much impossible unless we go through some sort of huge paradigm shift. Paradigm shift. And I think especially, I mean, his post basically kind of proved as well, in a way, why I didn't really go for shows like these in the first place. Because even though I know the intelligence part I'll do pretty well, I'm not interesting enough for television. I know you guys are going to say, no, you are interesting enough for television. No, I'm not. If you really know me, I'm probably not. Let's be frank here. I've been to 3 colleges now, got my bachelor's, about to get my master's, and I'm going to be an interfaith minister. And I just applied for study abroad. Pray for me. But yeah, other than those things, I mean, I couldn't even date somebody until I was 29. That should be evidence by itself that I'm not interesting enough for television. But the commentary underneath is horrifying. Some of the comments that they kept posting was sore loser. He posted this on day 1 before his loss was even broadcasted. So where's the sore loser part coming from? But I think Raut, in his, let's face it, in his intellectual faults, because even I have this to some degree, I will admit that, I have this to some degree, I think his heart was in the right place. His heart was definitely in the right place. I think if he only instead took the opportunity as a Jeopardy winner to instead highlight the problems in quizzing and it's like, hey, quizzing community, this is stuff that we need to fix to make it more welcoming to more people who are interested in it. That would have been the smarter approach. That would have been a much better approach compared to Jeopardy's not intellectual enough, and here's why. Especially with the fact that he has a film and television master's degree, he should know of all people that kind of approach was not going to work. I mean, granted, it got people to look. It even worked on me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this video. But insulting a show's intelligence, especially with the longevity of the show, but also especially with how fragile it has been since Alex Trebek's passing. Bad strategy, bro. Bad strategy. I'm sorry. I mean, no matter how many ways you look at it, unfortunately, man, Jeopardy is central to our culture. You can't really take that away from us. That's like making the pie without the fruit or meat inside, or trance music without the bass. There we go. It's like taking the bass out of trance music. It doesn't feel like the right music after a while. It's at this point, especially with how long that show's been running, you cannot separate America from Jeopardy. I'm sorry. Unless some other thing comes up that manages to help it take off, or American Gladiator, Double Dare, or Guts gets resurrected in the next year or two. The probability is pretty good. This is what we've got. So let's enjoy it for what it is. So that's the part that I think he definitely should have just stay in his lane a little bit. I'm sorry, but he really should. I got your point, but he just really should stay in his lane. But I think the latter half of his story was the part that kind of hit me a little bit and brought up this bigger question that I think we really need to address, and how we ultimately need to navigate in terms of social media and, frankly, the rest of our lives, really. So here's the rest of it. Raut told BuzzFeed... Okay, I've already read that paragraph. Raut says his love for quizzing began when he was a child. His parents, who moved from India to New York City before he was born, praised him for memorizing and reciting facts of the states and their capitals. I think subconsciously my father encouraged it because it felt like he needed to show everyone what a good American his son was, he said. The Jeopardy clip from the show's official Facebook page featured Raut quickly answering a question about the Statue of Liberty, which he referred to by its official name, Liberty Enlightening the World. Host Ken Jennings jokingly called him a show-off, a phrase that commenters repeated. I don't know why people were so shocked that I knew the name of the most popular statue in the city I was born in, he said. Why does that make me, as he said, the worst kind of smart person? In response to commenters calling him a bad sport for speaking out against Jeopardy after losing a game, Raut told BuzzFeed News he just wanted to use his one and only chance to start a conversation. That part right there. Hold on to that. In one of his Facebook posts, Raut outlined the issues that the quizzing community needs to address. Why rewards, recognition, and platforms in quizzing are distributed anti-meritocratically, and what can be done about that. Why game shows that don't reward quizzing ability hold so much power. But the lack of visibility of real quizzing has anything to do with the immense prevalence of racist and misogynist men in positions of power and the culture of silence around abuse. Why is the U.S. the only country that refers to quizzing as trivia? And why this culture shows so much contempt towards knowledge that doesn't directly feed capitalist machines? Former part, really pointless. Again, prescriptive versus descriptive definitions, but moving on. But the latter part, absolutely. We saw a lot of that in the last 2 or 3 years? Why negative stereotypes about quizzers, as well as pseudoscience that others them, continue to abound? How people ignore and passively accept these stereotypes and pseudoscience because the harm they do is borne primarily by women and people of color, and why complaints about racist exclusion and refusal of accommodation are dismissed as literally trivial just because they happen in the quizzing world, as though it's obvious that trivia is more important than racial equity. Since his Jeopardy episodes aired, Raut shared follow-up posts in response to criticism and redirected people to previous posts about racism and misogyny in the quizzing community. A January 23rd tweet from journalist Megan Greenwell renewed interest in what she called Raut's multi-week Facebook meltdown, which prompted media coverage. To clarify, Raut didn't actually compare himself to Muhammad Ali, which I just read a little bit earlier, as Greenwell's tweet suggests. He listed the boxer among other non-white activists who spoke out against the powerful. Peter Norman's Australian, but he did say POC athletes and their allies, which Norman certainly was. James Holzhauer, the third highest earning Jeopardy contest of all time, tweeted on January 24th in response to an article about Raut that, quote-unquote, anyone who's ever used social media to criticize Jeopardy or its producers should get a lifetime ban from the show. He did not respond to a request for comment for BuzzFeed News. That part I kind of disagree, considering... Rewind back to Mike Richards? That was a huge issue right there. But anyway... Raut isn't worried about a lifetime ban from Jeopardy, though. He repeatedly brought up a missive he wrote for future generations interested in quizzers, which we'll share in full. And this is the part that kind of broke my heart, because some of this is a little bit familiar. We have to look the next generation of quizzers in the eyes and tell them, I know you want to learn everything there is to know, but for your own sake, please don't. It will only get you labeled a know-it-all. You will be told that you're a freak, a product of genetic quirks rather than hard work and shining passion, or else a personality-less robot, and that label will be used to justify excluding you and marginalizing your voice. So for your own good, kill that light that burns inside you. Extinguish your love for learning. Instead, learn just enough to not seem threatening, and devote the rest of your energy to cultivating a hobby that someday a casting director would deem wacky, but not too wacky. which I think he basically got the wrong message out of it. I think, if anything, this would have been a great opportunity, if anything, to bring up, like, hey, intelligent people can be interesting too, and here's how. In fact, and if activism is such a big thing, again, that, like, him being a Jeopardy winner, he could have used the clout instead to say, like, hey, quizzing community, like, hey guys, I do Jeopardy, but then I also do this quizzing community too, which is even more intense. See? That will explain, like, hey, Jeopardy is one thing, but quizzing is another. And then, however, there are some issues that need to be fixed, and here is what we need to do. And it's a mixed bag, really, because on the one hand, he does bring up some value points, but on the other hand, especially considering that he has been in film and television, more or less, he could have known that, like, unfortunately, the only way to get the justice that you need in a field is to ultimately enact it yourself. It's only one way to say it, but another thing to actually do it. And at that point, I think it was more so about the doing and highlighting. That's where he should have put his efforts in, and instead, I think he just dug his heels in a little bit too deep. I think he has started to do. I think he might have gotten some PR managers to now pull in some damage control, because, again, some of those posts have since been redacted, if not been privated or deleted. And now I think maybe at this point he might be focusing on if he does have the humility, which I hope he does, especially when it comes to TV publicity. You never know what someone truly is unless, like, you've been consistently with them on and off screen. I hope he does have some sense of humility to maybe do an apology. I mean, he did say he didn't intend any offense, but looking at, like, I mean, as an English major, looking at that statement, there have been tons of ways where somebody without my degree, without my experience, or even with my experience, could easily get offended. But I think because I've been paying more attention to how influence affects how we perceive people, I couldn't really afford to fall for that trap. I didn't want to, because that, in essence, like, falling into the tropological trap, which unfortunately a lot of reporters did. I mean, the BuzzFeed article was the closest to I could see that didn't fall into it. Unfortunately, with a lot of newsworthy stuff, it falls into the tropological trap. With every good guy, there's got to be at least one villain. And unfortunately, Raut, especially with the way he posted on Facebook, he fell easily into the villain trap. And to conclude a little bit, here's a couple of passages from Daniel Borstein from his book The Image: A Guide to Pseudo Events in America. While these democratic ideas have been arising, and while popular government has flourished in the United States, the growth of the social sciences has given us additional reasons to be sophisticated about the hero and to doubt his essential greatness. We now look on the hero as a common phenomenon of all societies. We learn, as Lord Raglan, a recent president of the Royal Anthropological Institute, pointed out in The Hero from 1936, that tradition is never historical. Having examined another number of well-known heroes of tradition, he concludes that, quote, There is no justification for believing that any of these heroes were real persons, or that any of the stories of their exploits have any historical foundation. These heroes, if they were genuinely heroes of tradition, were originally not men, but gods. The stories were accounts of not of fact, but of ritual. That is, myths. Or as we learn from Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces from 1949, that all heroes, modern, ancient, and primitive, are the multiform expressions of truths disguised for us under the figures of religion and mythology. Following Freud, Campbell explains heroes as embodiments of a great monomyth. There are always stages of separation or departure, trials, victories, and initiation, and finally, return and reintegration into society. Nowadays, it matters little whether we see the hero exemplifying a universal falsehood or a universal truth. In either case, we now stand outside ourselves. We see greatness as an illusion, or, if it does exist, we suspect we know its secret. We look with knowing disillusionment on our admiration for historical figures who used to embody greatness. But I think this opening paragraph from the second section of the human pseudo event, from hero to celebrity, stands out even more, and I think is a pretty good summary of what we're basically seeing, not only in this event, but also basically in all social media events. The heroes of the past then are dissolved before our eyes or buried from our view. Except perhaps in wartime, we find it hard to produce new heroes to replace the old. We have yet to replace the heroes of old. And I think, if anything, we're only just starting to do that. Maybe there's often a sense of myopia or a little bit of a distortion when it comes to how we see our importance, because we are important in our unique and individual ways, but there's also the fact that ultimately we are human. We have our failings, and this right here that we saw is one giant display of failing here. And so this brings up another question. Is he going to be aware of his failing and then move past it? Or is he going to blunder into it? Is he going to blunder through it unknowingly? I don't know if I'll ever do a follow-up to this story, but I'll certainly do a follow-up with some more Borstein and Goffman at some point, because those two certainly gave me a lot of thought over the past 3 weeks, that's for sure. Are any of these people right? Who's to say? And I think the other part is also linguistics. A lot of it's linguistics. I mean, whether we call it trivia or quizzing, or we see that as pride versus a stage direction. There's a lot going on. We have complexities, but we also have simplicities. And so, give yourself some food for thought about how do you want to present yourself? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And what do you do if you happen to be in a similar crisis as Raut's? Or if not, even worse? How would you want to be treated? And most importantly, how would you react? A lot of food for thought. I'll do some more down the line. Hopefully Twitch and YouTube do not flag me for too much for this discussion, but I think it's something that I felt like talking about. This is not going to be a typical discussion, of course. There might be more, like, I will obviously pick up some more uplifting stuff in the future, but I am a huge fan of Jeopardy! 3 of my friends have ended up in it. I've even auditioned for it 5 times. Not got past the quizzing stage, of course, but I've tried 5 times to get into it. So my family members have even tried getting into it as well. It's a big part of American culture. That is one thing you can't exactly deny. So anyway, Jeopardy fans, what do you think? What do you think? Anybody else, what do you think? And please, please, please be respectful. Please be respectful. Respectful to in the comments down below, because I want this to be a really interesting and interactive discussion. Okay, good. So anyway, here's all my other stuff. So in case you want to check out some of my other YouTube and Twitch stuff, later on tonight I'm going to be playing a Fold Apart finale and maybe some more Abduction or Dandara. We'll see how I feel. Then tomorrow it is Sneaky Sasquatch Saturday, and then for my chill stream Sunday we're going to be playing Supernatural, the fitness game, not the Sam and Dean duo. At least I don't think they have a video game. We'll see. But anyway, lots of other games and stuff that's coming up, so keep an eye out for that. Check out my social media in case you want to see what else I do outside of these channels. Excuse me. Episodes I filmed in the lands of the Nanticoke and the Lenape. To find out more, visit native-land.ca to find out what your local indigenous land is, as well as contact your local tribal council and see what you can do to help or say hello. And shout out to Ross Repair Group for saving from my laptop from Davy Jones's locker. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Stay safe, everybody. For those who are watching for my stream, I will catch you later on tonight. And for those who aren't, and it's happened to be your first time watching my video, sorry. This is not my usual shtick, but I felt like talking about something that was really interesting to me. Anyway, stay safe out there, and in the beautiful words of Master Yensid of Kingdom Hearts 3, may your heart be your guiding key. Till next time, I'll see you later. Bye!